Hi, everyone. Welcome to the L to L chat. So, I will let some people hop on and join us. But as you hop on, I just want to introduce myself. So, for those who are not familiar with Lemons to Lemonade, I'm Brittney Oliver and I am the founder of Lemons to Lemonade. Lemons to Lemonade is a platform geared to help professionals navigate business or career challenges. Lemons to Lemonade started back in 2016. And since then, we've had virtual and in person events, and we've expanded to different cities. Like it started in New York, and now we've hosted Lemons to Lemonade mixers in Nashville, LA, Chicago. So we have a national global audience, and it's really exciting time to be able to continue to have these conversations with leaders in business, leaders in career to help bring that information to you all. So today is Black Women's Equal Pay Day. And Black Women's Equal Pay Day is so important. What this means is that it's a national day that we recognize the pay inequities that Black women face. So that means it takes us an additional 9 months to make what a white man makes. And that's really bad. Last year, Black Women's Equal Pay Day was August 3rd. Now it's September 21st. And so that means we've gone back. The gap has widened for us. And so I don't want to spend this conversation today talking about, all the walls that we hit, all the lemons that we face. But I did want to have this conversation with some really amazing women who are based in Nashville. They're service-based entrepreneurs, and they have a really great knowledge and insight on how to navigate some of the challenges that we face as creatives, as entrepreneurs, in getting the pay that we deserve. One thing that I do know and notice is that the conversation around Black Women's Equal Pay Day usually just focuses on the corporate ladder, how we climb and how that pay gap affects us there. But how does it affect us as entrepreneurs? It affects us in so many ways, and a lot of that is how we do business, how we get contracts, how we work with clients, the negotiation that comes with that, and even our branding. And so these wonderful women are going to join us to talk about how to navigate that and their best practices. So I'm going to start and let them introduce themselves. So I will bring on Vannesia Darby.
Hello. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Thank you, Brittney, for hosting. My name is Vannesia Darby, and I am the owner of Moxie Nashville, which is an agency specializing in business strategy and social media. And as a full-time job, I'm also a social media manager for Shonda Rhimes' production company, Shondaland. So super happy to be here, and thanks for having me. And let's get to it.
All right, Vannesia, thank you so much for introducing yourself. Sarah, I'm going to have you join us now.
Hello, ladies and everyone out there. First off, Brittney, thanks so much for organizing this. As I was listening to you talk backstage, just that 9 months, those statistics are so eye-opening, and that's why we're here today. So thank you for organizing this and for everything that you do with Lemons to Lemonade. But my name is Sarah Patton. I'm the owner of Social Bliss Events. We are a luxury event planning company that specializes in itinerary planning as well as those fun events. I'm also the co-founder of a new company that kind of burst out of the pandemic where we do custom rentals and backdrops. And so the name of that company is Hill Event Rentals.
Love it. And you both do really great work in Nashville and across the nation. So I'm really excited to have you both here to drop some gems.
Thanks so much. We're excited. We're excited.
So as we start this conversation around Black Women's Equal Pay Day, I'd love for each of you to talk about a time when you realized, your race and your gender played a part in how you were being paid unfairly.
I'll let Sarah go first.
What did you both try to do to get the pay that you deserve?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as I was brainstorming, I wanted to bring one from corporate America and then also one from kind of entrepreneur, small business life. So I've been out of the corporate game for almost 7 years, but thinking back to it, one of the times we got our bonus. So we used to get quarterly bonuses, and you're not supposed to talk about your money, but y'all know I make friends everywhere. So bonus time came. And so we were all talking, and come to find out that I had made the lowest bonus out of everyone. And so I was looking at my numbers compared to everyone else's numbers, and hit my target, all of these things. So I actually took it to my manager and I was like, hey, like, what is the kind of rubric for this pay scale? Mine just seems a little low. And so there wasn't honestly like really a rubric. I don't think they had too many systems in place. And so anyways, we talked, and thankfully I didn't have to share, hey, I'd spoken to some other people, but we went back and looked, and I was like, I just don't think this is the right pay. And so thankfully the company was willing to like make it right and go back. And so moving from that point forward, they were able to put a rubric in place. And so people could see like, this is how much money you're going to get paid. But I think one of the biggest points today is you have to stand up for yourself, and you have to be willing to have uncomfortable conversations and to address issues that come up. And so in that stance, I was more than willing to fight for my money and to do what was right, not only for myself, but for everyone else to come, and to make sure that we were all on an even playing scale. And then in event planning world, so a few years ago, I had a corporate client, and we had negotiated a rate. And at the time, they were coming out of the pandemic, and so we only had X amount of dollars. And so I went back for a couple of events, like looking through things they had done years prior, other conferences, and saw a rate of another company that was making triple what I was making. Ooh. And so I went and addressed it, and I was like, I know that things were bouncing back, and here's what: either we need to put a plan in place to bring my rate up to this, or this will be my last event. And I ended up having to step away working with that company because I value myself and know what I'm worth. And so I think that's another piece of the puzzle is the challenges that come with when someone else doesn't value you or recognize and willing to invest in you, the kind of the next steps that you have to take. And for me, that was stepping away from that contract. But here's the thing: more than triple within the next quarter came in. And so when you stand up for yourself and when you value, opportunities will chase you down. And so I don't want us to be scared as Black women to be able to hold on and have that scarcity mindset of like, this is all I have, because there is more than enough. There is abundance out there, and it will chase you down.
How do you professionally say period? I know we're on LinkedIn. It's a different crowd. It's a different crowd. You're on Instagram. I'd be in the comments.
But I love that, Sarah, because when we start to see our value and we step away from things, we make room for the things that are for us. We make room for what's for us. And when you did that, it was phenomenal to see that you were able to make even more money by leaving that contract.
Mm-hmm. And I think for me, I also give a corporate and entrepreneur example. So in corporate, similar to Sarah, I tend to be chatty, if you haven't noticed. And so me and it was actually a white woman. We were around the same age, came from a similar area. And we were just in different parts of the company. And so to some extent, you understand that there's a different pay scale depending on what part of the company that you're in. But I remember I tried to negotiate, and it was just, we don't have any money. This is it. This is the cap. Are you coming or not? And so I made the decision to go because I wanted it. But then talking to her, she mentioned, oh yeah, I got relo. And I said, you got relo? And she said, yeah, you know, I negotiated what my bonus would be. So she started dropping all these things that I didn't even get the opportunity to. And so that's when I realized I was playing a different game. There was no, oh, if I do great work, they're going to promote me or they're going to give me this bonus. That doesn't exist sometimes. And so you have to, like Sarah mentioned, advocate for yourself. In that instance, I ended up quitting. So I didn't quit immediately, but that was one of the things where I realized, because you don't always have to negotiate pay. You can negotiate the package. So that's reload, that's office supplies, that may be vacation time, PTO. So all those things are negotiable. In addition to your base salary and bonuses, stock options, all that. But that wasn't even afforded to me. And when I tried to push the conversation, it was completely shut down. And so that's when I knew I may not be aligned with the company and it's okay to step away. The second time was when a corporate client tried to, and this is another way, again, it's not always tangible dollars. They tried to add on more work for the same price. And so as entrepreneurs, we have to be very specific about the deliverables, even in service-based industries, because sometimes, you know, even in social media, it'll go from one platform management to 3 platforms, right? And so you start to customize different dimensions of assets. That takes time and money to do all of that, right? And so in that instance, I went back and I said, great, thank you so much. We would love to take on this additional work. This will be the additional cost, right? And so I had that conversation, and it's not difficult because you're examining work. And so I had that conversation and they ended up saying, oh, well, we'll just stay where we're at. And I said, great, that works for everybody. So that was an example of 2 examples of that time.
Advocating for yourself is so important.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad that you were able to do that, but also, you know, really understand what it is that you do, your expertise, and what that looks like when people try to add more things on. And Vannesia, that was a really great way to go into our next conversation or question, because when we start our businesses, you know, as creatives, there's a couple of things that come in our heads, right? First, how am I going to maintain this lifestyle that I have, right?
Lifestyle of lavishness.
Yeah. How am I going to do this? You know, how am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to, you know, go on my trips? How do I do that, right? I don't want to be struggling. The second thing that we're thinking about is, you know, how am I going to invest in my business? You know, because when you start a business, sometimes you have to use some of your own money to get it started. And lastly, how do you get paid? Because we all know that a lot of times people are talking about, I've made 6 figures, but that doesn't mean you made 6 figures in profit, right?
Come on, gross and net. Let's talk about it. There's a difference.
There's a difference, right? So your company can garner all this money, but were you able to pay yourself? And so those are some of the basic things that we think about. So for both of you, I'm curious, you know, what was your strategy and like setting your pricing and achieving the goals that you had set when you started your business?
Yeah, I remember when I first started, I didn't have that much experience. So my business is 6 years old. I'm about 10 years into the marketing industry, right? So when I first started, I was about 3 or 4 years in. And so I didn't necessarily have the long receipts that I have now. And so I built it. And every opportunity to have a new service offering, I started thinking about what would this cost, right? And so it's okay. And I think sometimes we skip straight into, you know, I built a 6-figure business in 3 months. That's great for you. For other people who have to build brick by brick, it's okay to start small and then to also build as you keep growing. And so that's one thing that I did. And that started with actually realizing what I did. At the time, I didn't know the language of consulting, right? I didn't know to charge for discovery calls, clarity calls, those type of things. And once I really started digging into not only the practice of social media and marketing, but also what additional things are people asking me for that I can put a price tag on, then then my whole worth started to increase. And so there are some times where you got to get those quick wins in, if you don't have a long list of experience, and that's okay too. If I had to do it all over again, I think for me, the only thing that was missing was the confidence to charge what I could have been charging. That was literally it. So if you do a good job up front examining exactly what your services are and being very, very clear in that, then you can charge what you charge. But it took me a while to kind of get those packages together, just being transparent.
I'm very similar to Vanessa. I've been in business for almost 9 years. And so I didn't know what I was doing, to be completely honest. But what I did, I will say, is do your research. So research the market, both where you're located locally and then domestically. So that's one of the things that we did in our business plan was like, what are event planners making here in Nashville and then also across the country, and then kind of started putting packages together. One of the things I did do, because I didn't know kind of the pricing market, is every 5 clients I booked, I actually increased my price. So that kind of gave me the confidence of like, okay, 5 people have done this. We've done this really well. Let's bump it up. So that is one of the things I would say starting out. I'd been in the industry for about 5 years, but hadn't done anything on my own. So that's why I too also did not have the confidence to just start out like, I know what I'm doing. This is where I am. But being very, having everything together in the beginning makes it so much easier, but that's not always the case for that. But I would say definitely do your research, see what other people are charging. And if you can, like, work underneath someone else. Like, I think sometimes sometimes you just need the hands-on experience to get started, to honestly even see if you like what you're doing. So sometimes you just need to try it. People think they want to be event planners, and then they come and work for me for a day and they're like, I absolutely do not want to do this, because they see the behind the scenes of us setting up tables and me moving things around and throwing the linens. And they're like, oh, I just see the after pictures. I no longer want to do this. So I think getting some of that experience is really great for you too, to help build your confidence.
I love that. One thing that both of you mentioned was confidence. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to kind of tap into that a little bit, because right now we're seeing a lot of Black women, leaving school, leaving college really early, and they're going straight into entrepreneurship without having, that experience under their belt, or just to even say that, they know what a business looks like. They've been a part of a corporate structure. How valuable is that for, our young Black women coming out of school right now? They're having a hard time finding the job that they want or starting their careers, and they're just betting on themselves. What is the advice that you would give them so that they can move with confidence?
You want to go, Sarah?
Sure. Okay. I would say, honestly, this is some of the things I say is I worked for a small business before I did this. And that is where I was thrown into everything and learned all the different aspects of the business. My corporate career taught me how to write an email to respond within 24 to 48 hours. These are some of the things that your career path builds on itself. So even though I was an event planner 10 years ago, 15 years ago, working for other people, I take that skill set and can use it in my business today. So some of those things are actually really great. I actually worked at my corporate job for 2.5 years working and building my business before I quit, because I wanted to make sure that I had a nest egg, that I did have clients, retainer clients and things coming in before I fully quit. So I think that it's good to build those skill sets. Yes, I think there are people that can just jump straight into it. They have the capital, they have the business. But I will say, probably, I think the majority of people, there are some skills that you need to hone through corporate America, through other jobs, working for other people. And the thing is, you can always learn what you like about it and what you dislike. And that's what I often do. And then take that to shift my business model.
Totally agree. I was literally going to say the same thing. Focus on the skill and not the job, right? So a lot of people come to me and say, I do social media, right? But they can't edit copy. They don't know how to craft hashtags. They don't know the difference between IGTV and IG Reels. They don't, and it's not a slight on them. You're green. You haven't been in the game long enough to get your feet wet and to mess up and to have typos and to course correct and stuff like that. My very first boss in the industry that ever gave me a paycheck was Tracy Artist. And I, for those of you who know my career history, I DM'd her on Facebook and ended up working for her later on. And she literally told me, babe, if you don't make connections off of my name, that's on you. That's not on me. And so I was able to take that into my first day even working at the label. When I went on to work after working with Tracy, I walked into a meeting and knew everybody in there, the producer, the manager, and the artist. And so sometimes it's the time, it's the relationships, and it's the actual skill set that help to build your confidence. It's not actually the results that you yield. It's the fact, like Sarah mentioned, that you can respond to an email in 24 to 48 hours, that you know how to effectively communicate in front of people, that you understand that there's going to be some maybe, off the record conversations that help to build your relationships with people so that you can call in a favor later on. So it's not always, can you do the work? I know plenty of people that do basic work, but have amazing relationships. And so that's what I like to call learning the game. And so if you learn the game, it helps you later on. Additionally, I love the fact that young women are coming out of college or even starting their businesses in college. I wish I started Moxie in college, honestly. And so because you get a lot of those early mistakes out the way, but you can't also negate experience. Like you need both. And so I think if we expand the lens to look at it as a both and not an either or, then we can move forward in a really powerful way.
You're so right about that. Both of you have shared some really great information about, making certain environments work for you. That's so important. But also, what's important and what I feel like Black women have thrived in doing is building their personal brands. Personal brands can help you monetize your expertise. It can help you build your side hustle and eventually turn into a full-time business. And I think we do it well. We do it so well. I'm so happy to see so many of us really tap into who we are, our expertise, and be able to showcase our purpose and our passion and monetize it, right? So I would love to get your thoughts, and I'll start with you, Vannesia. How did your personal brand help you to return to corporate on your own terms?
Yeah, that was a wrestling I had to do with myself. So one thing that I did differently when I was applying, I ended up, I just started working again in the summer. And so around the spring, I started toying around with the idea of what going back to corporate would look like for me. It made me so intentional about the jobs I applied for. And then when I went through interview rounds for 2 different jobs, and they both appreciated my entrepreneurship experience and they both appreciated my personal brand. And I remember specifically in the Shondaland interview, there was a comment about you have to have a certain hustle and grit to be an entrepreneur. And so I think for me, I know for me, it worked in my favor. I didn't go in there. And before I would kind of hide the fact that I was, I had this business, right? When I first started, and I was still applying, I was thinking about going back into corporate, and I would hide the fact that I had a business, but they would always find it because I like to market my business, right? So they would always find it. So they're asking, I remember being in one particular interview, they were asking me questions about my website. Like they were asking, like, "Oh, I see you built your site on WordPress," and I was like, "Is this a real interview?" So I think the lines of personal and professional for me have always been kind of blurred. But I think now corporations are understanding that too, and that there is a skill set that entrepreneurs bring to the table and a level of leadership capacity that everyone doesn't have. And it's not a slight to anyone else. We're just built differently. And so if you can use that to your advantage in your interview process, if you use that to your advantage in your application process, even on your resume, your cover letter, all of those are examples of how I can market. So if I can market myself, I can market your company and the products and services that you offer.
Love it. And another way is, leveraging it if you are in the corporate space, utilizing your personal brand to one, find the role, the niche that you are passionate about that works for what your skill set is.
Mm-hmm.
Also for raises, right? Those performance reviews.
Mm-hmm.
You utilize your personal brand.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So important. Sarah, my question for you is, how did your personal brand help you feel confident to make that leap into full-time entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I think for me, I've always been a connector. And as Vannesia talked about earlier, those relationships are key. But I had been in Nashville. I've been here now almost 18 years. And so knowing the city, that's what my company does. We showcase the city. We showcase Nashville. My personal brand, that's what I do. I'm out and about. I'm networking. I'm trying new restaurants. And so the validity that my personal brand just carries over into, our professional brand, into my company. And so they weave in together. And so it's so important to build that and to just create that trust. Like, my community knows that I'm not out here just showcasing anything and everything for 10 cents. Like, I showcase things that I truly believe in, that I really want everyone to enjoy in our city. So I think they definitely weave in together, but creating that trust within your community is really key.
And I also want to say one more thing, because Sarah touched on it, making sure that you are that your personal brands and professional brands align, right? Like, so if there's something that you don't stand for in your personal brand, you don't have to go work for a company that stands for that in your professional brand. And so that way there's not that hard of a shift. It's not that hard of a crossover, because I work in entertainment. I went to go work for a production company. And you know what I'm saying? So it made sense. So if it makes sense, like Sarah mentioned, her trust with the city and the rapport, and Sarah's events are top tier, and so it makes sense that she would start an event planning company. And if she ever went back to corporate to go work at an event planning company, that would make sense. So you got to make it make sense for you.
Yes, make it make sense. But Sarah, I also love that, in a sense, in a nutshell, you pretty much were saying you got to walk the walk and talk the talk. Mm-hmm. And you exude that with your personal brand. And, I think for all of us, we've been able to highlight that in different ways. And people will come to you. They'll find you. They'll see it. I've been able to get freelance opportunities just because of what I'm posting on social media, right? Or the things that I'm talking about, like best practices for pitching a journalist. Those opportunities come just from talking about the things that I enjoy doing. So, Sarah, you have a lot of clients, and I really love the point you made earlier about after, taking on 5 clients, then you would raise your prices. I love that. That was a really awesome gem. I wanted to get into, event production and how you negotiate, because you're dealing with a lot of clients. You're also dealing with a lot of vendors. And so what are some negotiation tips that you can share with us about navigating, clients and vendors and making sure your business is growing when you're setting the prices?
Yeah, one of the things, as Vannesia already spoke about, is having that very clear-cut, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm blanking. Sorry, just a bucket of business. This is what we are performing, and this is what we are doing. If anything goes outside of this, then there will be an additional charge. So for us, for instance, we calculate internally. I've been in the game long enough now that I can kind of estimate how long something takes. Especially for events. Like, if your event is starting at 5 p.m. and it ends at 7 p.m., we know how long it's going to take to set up and to tear down. Now, if you decide you want your event to be from 5 p.m. to 12 a.m., that's going to be an additional charge, because what our contract states is this many hours. And so I think being very clear about the service that you're performing. For instance, I was talking to somebody about this the other day, is that when an event ends, everybody thinks, oh, the job is done. I'm actually following up with the photographers, the videographers, getting making sure your deliverables are on time, wrapping up any invoices, so the party doesn't stop at the end of the day. So I think knowing your scope of work, that was the word I was looking for earlier, is so important. And making sure to be able to negotiate. Also, one of the biggest things I've learned, not everyone is your client. This is what it takes. Here is the investment to work with Social Bliss Events. If this is something that you either can't pay or don't feel that it's worth, that is totally fine. But there are plenty of other people out there. And so it also, another tip is if you're closing every deal, you're actually probably being priced too low, because some people shouldn't be able to afford your services, or people should be able to save up and work with you. Like, it's an honor to work with all of us. Our businesses are great. We provide excellence. We are great at our jobs. And so you are going to outprice some people, and then other people may just go with other planners or marketing companies for a different reason, and that's okay too. But being, once again, going back to that word, confident in the services that you provide and the excellence that you deliver.
Sarah, I love that. Not everyone's meant for you.
Mm-hmm.
And, being able to be confident and saying no, the price is too low if you're closing all those deals. And that's a really great thing for people to keep in mind as they're building their business, when they're vetting clients. You don't have to say yes to everything. Vannesia, I'm curious with you, you've been able to turn your employers into clients. Mm-hmm. And that's a really unique perspective, because you are someone that employed you is having to kind of change that lens of how they look at you and see
mm-hmm.
you as someone who is, providing a service to them. Mm-hmm. You share, how you were able to navigate that relationship and transition.
Yeah, I think it goes back to, again, focus on the work. I think the one thing I did correctly early on in my career is that I did great work, whether it was for myself, whether it's for somebody else's company. And so this is a little tip. Okay. If you're not a full-time entrepreneur yet, before you leave your job, okay, before you quit, send the kumbaya email that says, thanks so much. I appreciate the time, all the other stuff, right? Actually have a template if you need one. And put your personal information on there, right? And so I did that. I remember sending that email off my last day, going to lunch, coming back. There was a flood of messages this was not the label. So there was artists, there was managers and stuff like that emailing me just saying, thank you, thank you, thank you. What's next? Thank you. I'll hit you up. Thank you. So people wanted to work with me because of relationships and because of the previous work. And so when you have that rapport established, and then you have to see yourself differently when you're going into meetings. Just like when I was at the label, I started as an intern. So when I came back, I made sure to say, I'm not the intern. So if you see yourself as the entrepreneur, if you see yourself as a service provider, and you do have that relationship, you have your scope of work, as Sarah mentioned, and you're confident because of your track record, then you can go in there and you set the precedent for that relationship. And so it wasn't super difficult because, like I said, our relationships were very tight anyway. Especially when you work as a marketing assistant, because you were literally doing everything. So then when I came back as more so, providing different services, then I was able to say, this is what I do. This is what I don't do. This is when you can contact me. This is when I'm off the grid. And it just was what it was. It's not something to talk about. Like, it's not something to negotiate about. This is what it is. And it's not being rude or anything like that. You're just setting your own boundaries and making sure that your clients respect that.
And I know time is going over, so let me know if you have a hard stop. But I did have 2 follow-up questions for both of you.
Please, we're here to talk about the shmoney, okay?
Yes. So I'll just say both of the questions. So for Sarah, my follow-up question for you is, was there a challenging time when you were navigating your clients and having to negotiate your price? And were they trying to lowball you based off of your gender and race? And how did you overcome that? And then Vannesia, my question for you is, did you face any challenges when turning your employers into clients? How were you able to get them to respect you, to give you the pay that you were asking for and that you deserve, so that they didn't shortchange you because you have a relationship with them?
We're trying to see who's coming off mute first. So mine is really quick. This is what having a relationship gets you, right? A relationship doesn't get you a discounted rate. A relationship will get you the conversation to negotiate your package, right? So if I wanted to work with you and you couldn't afford my rate, then in a relationship, I'm able to say, okay, let me take off the last 3 out of the 5 services, or the last 4 out of the 5 services, right? So I'm able to say, it's not the price that we're arguing so much. Like I said, it's not always money, right? You can negotiate your services. Now, if this person is not someone that has a relationship with me, the price is the price, right? But if this person does have a relationship with me, I'm able to say, okay, well, maybe we can do this in phases, right? Or maybe we can, get paid on a quarterly basis versus a monthly basis. And so you start to tweak around those other parts of the deliverables to where you're able to feel like you're getting a fair opportunity. And if they can't do that, then you just can't work together. And that's okay, because like Sarah mentioned, there's plenty of work to be done. So a lot of people, for lack of a better phrase, will spin the block, right? And they'll come back to me and say, hey, and oftentimes the rate is higher. Right? So you might want to get me when you can. And so oftentimes the rate is higher, but I've had a couple people come back and say, I wasn't ready then, but I'm ready now. And so then we're able to have that conversation again and get the rate that I need for my team. Or like I said, adjust the services to where they feel like they're getting what they need.
Yeah, for me, I'll add in not just the race and the gender, but also age. Also plays an impact as well. So what we were doing, having some conversations and negotiating for a big contract, and they were willing to budge. They really honed on kind of, we don't know about your experience. So I've been in the industry almost 15 years and owned my own for almost 9. So I have the experience. I have the receipts to show. And they were not willing. And I think, once again, going back to, it's an investment for your company to work with mine to provide the excellence that we're going to. And if you can't see that, then that's when I had to be willing to walk away. And from this deal, we did end up walking away. And I can sleep at night because I know that I'm not going to put my team and my staff through anything to reduce the price for this. And especially when someone doesn't see the value that they bring. It's a totally different story when people say, hey, I see the value that you bring. I just can't afford this right now. So then in relationship, you can have those conversations about tweaking your scope of work. But when someone just flat out doesn't think that you're worth it, there's nothing that you can do with that. And honestly, it's more of a headache to work with those type of clients because they don't value you. They don't value your brand. And so for us and for our values in our company, that it was one that we just were able to walk away from. And so, yeah, they may come back around. And if they do, we'll have conversations then. But for now, it's a no.
I love that term, spin the block, because that happens a lot for us. But what I love about this conversation is that both of you, in your journey to entrepreneurship, you've learned your confidence, right? You've also relinquished that scarcity mindset that a lot of us face with, oh, I have to say yes to everything, or why didn't that person, want to work with me? Both of you move in a sense where it's like, okay, right now it doesn't work, and that's fine. But you have my number, you have my information, you can always come back around. So, just to sum up what both of you have shared, I love that. I love that you have been able to be in that space. And what I hope for everyone who's tuning in is that as you're navigating, setting your rates, scaling your business, growing your business, that you think about those things. There's enough for you. There's clients for you, the right clients for you that will pay you what you want and what you need. Is there anything that you ladies would like to leave our audience with as we wrap up?
I just want to say first, again, thank you for putting this together. I love chatting with both of y'all and having everyone eavesdrop on a conversation we would normally have. just ask, right? Like just ask. I took a negotiation class when I was in grad school with white men, and it changed my life. And sometimes it's literally just having the audacity to ask for what you want. Let them tell you no, but don't be afraid to ask, and don't talk yourself out of asking.
Yeah, to piggyback on that, I was like, what's the worst they can say is no, and you're still at the same place. But if they say yes, then you've opened up a door of opportunity. So yeah, be confident, be brave, and just ask.
And the last thing I want to leave you all with is have conversations like this with your girlfriends, with, colleagues, people who don't look like you. Have these important financial conversations, because knowledge is wealth, and it can help you. Things that you didn't know about, things that you didn't think about, can help you level up. And so don't be afraid to have those conversations with the people in your life. Well, thank you all for joining us for Black Women's Equal Pay Day. I hope this conversation helped you all as you grow in your businesses as creative freelancers, as creative service-based entrepreneurs. Sarah, Vannesia, thank you so much for your time. And hopefully, so just a quick little thing. This is a Lemons to Lemonade moment. So Sarah and Vannesia and I were supposed to do this in person. And if you followed Lemons to Lemonade for a while, I haven't had an in-person event since 2019. So I was really looking forward to it. So that was a lemon. But, technology, right? The pandemic really created opportunities to take conversations digitally. And so even though a venue may have pulled out, we were able to continue this conversation and bring it to a bigger, larger stage. So I want to just share that Lemons to Lemonade moment, because there's always something, right, that we're turning into lemonade. And so just a reminder that something may not work out today, but it can turn around in a different way. All right. Well, thank you all. Have a wonderful Wednesday. And remember, it's the 21st night soon of September. So summer is not summer. So summer is ending and we're entering fall. So pull out those boots and those sweaters and get into it.
Definitely.
Bye.
Bye.